Okay, welcome to the third video of indices, just kind of a practice round. This should be a bit more tricky. So number one here, I have 1 over 2x. I would just write that as a half and then x to the power of -1. You could write it as 2 to the power of -1 times x to the power of -1. But I think this is probably more convenient to just shift all the numbers to the front and have the variables at the back. Okay, for 2, again, I have 2 over 3, so I'll write that as 2 over 3. The x at the top goes to the back, and because it was the top, I didn't really change anything. But this is an x at the bottom, and it's actually x to the power of a half. So if it comes to the top, it becomes a negative number, negative a half. So this will become 2 over 3x, and then pretty much 1 minus a half is just a half. Okay, number 3, I have 1 over 3, so I'll write 1 over 3, and that is an x, and that's a 2, so it just becomes -2 as I move it to the back. Okay, and number 4, I have, it's maybe a bit confusing because the 1 isn't written there, so there's a 2. So a common mistake here would be just to write the x, and then, or writing the 2 and then the x, and going on, but not realizing that x is actually to the power of -1. So it's actually a half, so I would actually go and just write a half. And then the x that's at the top, I'll just write at the back, and then multiplied with the x at the bottom, but that is now a cube root. So here would be a third, but because it was underneath the line, it becomes -1/3. And I would just keep that as a half x, and 1 minus a third would just be 2/3. Okay, I have space for number 5. And number 5 is, there's a 3 at the top, so I can actually just write the 3 because there's no number at the bottom. Well, there is going to be a number at the bottom if I look at that. What do I want to do here? Let's just do the top first and we'll worry about that later. So this is a 3, and then that's x squared. And then at the bottom, I have the cube root of 27. So that would be 3, right? So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So it would be a 3 underneath the line. If I just wrote that, whatever I got underneath the line, let's just quickly do that. That would have been a 3, and then an x cube root would have been a half. So I know that would reduce to 1, or if I wrote it here, it would be 3 to the power of -1. And we can see what will happen to this. I have two numbers, or two bases that are the same, and it'll just be 1 minus 1. So it would be 3 to the power of 0, and anything to the power of 0 is 1. So that's one way of looking at it. But we still have to sort out this part over here. Oh, sorry, I see I made a mistake. That's not a, it shouldn't be a half, it should be a third. So the x is, the power is 1, and the root is 3. So if I do this, I'm going to have 1. Obviously, those two would cancel out. And then I have, this, sorry, this should have been a -1. Oh my goodness. There we go. That's all sorted. So 2 minus a third would be x, and it would be 1 2/3. Or you could have written it as x 3, 4, 5 over 3. Okay, you could have also just did 3x squared like I did there, and then knew that's going to be 3 to the power of x of a half, well, a third, and just cancel the 3's, and then left with x squared times x negative a third. But yeah, in all, it's kind of the same thing. Cool. So let's take a look at the rest. Number 6. Again, I haven't, well, not again, it was the first time we see a negative. I just keep the negative there. I have 3 over 5, so I keep that as 3 over 5. Let's say this is 6. And the x cubed I keep there. And this is x cubed, but it's underneath the line, so it would be x to the power of a third. Well, cube root, not cubed, cube root. And that would be a minus. And I'll just be left with 3 over 5. X 3 minus a third would be 2 and 2/3, or 3 over 5 x again 6, 7, 8 over 3. Cool. Let's do number 7. And here I have a 2 underneath the line, so I'll keep it as a half. That x to a third I'll keep there as a third. It's positive because it's at the top. And here I have a cube root of x. So it's going to be x to the power of 3, but because it's underneath the line, well, not to the power of 3, power of a third. And because it's underneath the line, it's going to be a negative, taking it up. And here I have a half, and basically I'm just adding these two, and they are basically cancelling each other out, or reducing to 1 is the more formal way. And you could see that because x to the power of a third could have been written like the cube root of 3, and I could have written it like this, and these two would have just cancelled out, and I would have been left with a half. Okay, 8. Let me make a lot of space. This is a lot of writing, so let's keep the negative there. The 6 over 3, I'm going to write it now as 6 over 3, but that actually reduces to 3. Well, let's just write it as 6 over 3 just to start off with, but that's going to reduce to 2. At the top I have x to the power of 3 over 2, so I just leave that. At the bottom, the 3 I already wrote, and here I have something interesting. I have the cube root of 8, which I know is 2. So basically this 2 will be under the line, or if I wanted to write it at the top, it's going to be 2 to the power of negative 1. Again, this is, you don't have to do it like this. I think I'll show the other way as well, that you'd probably prefer, but I'm just like following the rules, and whether we follow the rules one way or another way, we will usually end up at the same end product. And here this x is 2 over 3 because it's power over root. And I can make it easier for myself to say, okay, well, the 3 can go in itself once, and the 6, that will be a 2. So I'm left with negative 2 times x to the power of 3 over 2 times 2 to the power of negative 1 times x to the power of 2 over 3. And I see this 2 and that 2, they are the same bases, and this index is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0, and it would just kind of reduce to 1. And I'm left with a negative x, and now I just have to add these two things, but it's a 3 halves plus 2 thirds, so I'll have to make them the same. Have the same denominator, so here I'll multiply both sides by 2, I'll get a 4 over 6, and here multiply by 3 both sides, and I'll get 9 over 6, and again I made that silly mistake of not making it a negative number. Oh dear, I hope you'll be able to forgive me for this very silly mistake. I'm making a video to help you, and then I'm making really weird errors. So that would have been a negative number, right, because it went to the top, and it would have been 9 minus 4, which would be a 5 over 6. Okay, so that's the one way of looking at it. The other way, if I did the numbers on its own, I would have had 6x to the power of 3 over 2, and the 3 I would have had here, and if I took the cube root of the 8, it would have been a 2. And then I could have written this as x to the power of 2 over 3. And now I see that the 3 times the 2 is going to cancel out or reduce to 1 with that 6 at the top. And then I would be left with x to the power of 3 over 2 times x to the power negative 2 over 3. Okay, cool. And yeah, that's how that one works. And then 9, the last one here, I'll have 2/3 again. I'll put the x to the power of 3 at the back, and then times x, this is power over root, so it's negative because it's coming from the bottom, 2/4, power over root, and that would just be a half, right? So it's going to be 2/3 x 3 minus, that's going to be a half, so that would be 2/3 x, and that would be 2.5, or 2/3x 5/2. Okay, this is this was the third video. In the next video, we're going to look at some tricky ones with multiple terms. Yeah,